battle which followed was tactical and well thought out, 60 miles from the port of Alexandria. The 8th Army began their advance over the minefields, starting on October the 27th, 1942. Both sides engaged in close-quarter tank and infantry combat, which lasted 8 days. Many lives were lost. Hitler demanded that Rommel continued fighting, but Rommel knew that he would lose, so decided to retreat back to Libya on November the 2nd. Allies captured 6 generals, 8,000 Germans and 22,000 Italians. Rommel escaped with the rest of the Axis forces. Montgomery was later knighted for his victory, one that had restored some faith to the British people. The war had been progressing well for the Germans, despite trying to defeat the Soviet Union in a single campaign. By the 2nd of February 1943, the Germans had suffered a major defeat with the Battle of Stalingrad, a definite turning point in the war and for the Soviet Union. For the rest of the war, Germany were on the retreat. Also in 1943, Hitler's health went down rapidly, not to mention 7 assassination attempts by his own officers. None of them were successful. Back in North Africa, on May the 13th, German and Italian troops surrendered after British and US forces swept through Tunis and Bizerta, ending the 3-year struggle. The Allied invasion of Sicily, codenamed Operation Husky, started on July the 10th, 1943 and didn't end until August the 17th. Its capture was expected to speed the advance of the Allied 8th Army. The operation met heavy opposition and many of the paratroopers were shot down. A major part of this invasion was the capture of the Primazol Bridge across the Simito River. The Allies drove the Axis land, sea and air forces from the island, but the bridge was finally retaken by the British infantry, which led the way to the Italian leader Benito Mussolini being toppled from power, and opened Italy up to an Allied invasion. By September the 8th, Italy had surrendered to the Allies. After the Italians surrendered, the Germans formed a strong resistance, but the Allies pushed through Italy. During this time, the Great Abbey, which was a huge medieval monastery, was also used by the Germans as a lookout. It was destroyed. By May 24, 1944, the Germans had retreated from Anezo, a major city in Italy, which gave the Allies control of Rome.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world.
Just over a week later, Operation Neptune was put into motion. 6,500 vehicles and over 130,000 combined Allied forces stormed over the English Channel by sea and air to 5 beaches in Normandy, France. Golden Sword beaches were taken by Montgomery and the British forces. Utah and Omaha Beach were invaded by the Americans, and Canada attacked Juneau. Unfortunately, the Allied forces were never informed that Hitler reinforced those beaches with a full battalion of German soldiers. A bloodbath prevailed, yet the Allies eventually controlled the beachheads. They then fought their way through France, finally taking back Paris on August 25, 1944. In the month of July, a major bomb plot took place. This was another assassination attempt on Hitler by his generals. Again unsuccessful, Hitler escaped with only minor cuts and bruises, and each and every general suspected to be involved was executed. Erwin Rommel, who was also thought to be involved, was blackmailed into committing suicide, otherwise his family would suffer and die. His suicide took place on October the 14th, 1944. At the end of 44, the Germans went on the offensive to try and split the US and British Allied lines in half, to then destroy 4 of the Allied armies. This was known as the Battle of the Bulge. The Germans were defeated, but the loss of life was great on both sides, making it one of the largest and bloodiest battles of World War II. The Russians finally claimed back their country after defeating the Germans. They marched through Poland and eventually found Auschwitz, an extermination camp. It was set up in preparation for the final solution. The results of this and other camps throughout Poland were shocking. This came to be known as the Holocaust. 90% of these people in these camps were innocent Jewish families. It was liberated on the 27th of January 1945. Those not killed in the gas chambers died of starvation, forced labour, infectious disease, individual execution and medical experiments. The unnecessary death toll was over 1 million. On March the 6th, 1945, the Blitz finally ended for Britain after dealing with heavier bomb attacks from V-2 rockets and flying bombs, known as Doodlebugs. Russia entered Berlin ahead of the United States and British forces, who were just outside Germany with the Italians, who had sided with the Allies. Benito Mussolini tried to escape, but he was captured. He and his mistress had a public execution where they were both shot. They were later strung up for thousands to see. Hitler committed suicide by shooting himself on the 30th of April. He also took a cyanide capsule to prevent any failures in his efforts. This was in fear of what the Allied forces would do to him. Heinrich Himmler, who invented the Jewish death camps, was captured, but he killed himself while in prison. The worst suicide of all was that of Joseph Goebbels. He had an SS dentist poison and shoot his 6 children before he shot himself and his wife. During all of this, President Roosevelt passed away, and Harry Truman was elected as the new president of the USA.
Today is Victory in Europe Day.
Victory in Europe on the 8th of May, also known as VE Day, was virtually the end of the war as the Allies had taken control of Berlin. Initial plans to invade Japan in a similar way to D-Day were overruled by Harry Truman. He allowed the very first nuclear bomb to be used on Japan, known as the Fatboy. The first bomb was dropped on the city of Hiroshima, and then 3 days later on Nagasaki. With these weapons in use, the Japanese would have been wiped out in a matter of days. They promptly surrendered on the 14th of August. The world was left in ruins after 6 years of war, from September the 1st, 1939 to September the 2nd, 1945. It's upsetting that so many innocent lives were lost, even now 66 years on. The sacrifice was great, and we'll never forget how the brave brought us to peace.